Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is John. I'm a filmmaker slash creator and your host for Make Limited Podcast, where we talk about how to change our circumstances when life happens. In other words, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Today, we're talking about change before change changes you. All right, everyone. Welcome to Make Limited Podcast with your host, John. Today, we are talking about change before change changes you. Now, this is a topic closely related to my heart. This is circumstances that I believe I have gone through, you have gone through, a lot of us have gone through, most of us. And it's something that we as humans have, per se, a hard time, some of us, a hard time going through change, right? And it's been sometimes difficult, sometimes confusing, sometimes it's unapologetic, and we do things, we make decisions, and change is inevitable, right? It happens. There's nothing we can do about it, but it happens in our lives as we grow, as we learn something. Change happens. We start learning new things, we start developing, and there's a lot of things that go into it when we talk about change. And today we're talking about that change in a matter of how we can deal with it and what can we do about it. So we're going to go into 4 things that I want to talk about that are going to be super beneficial when you think about change. So we're talking about today, change before change changes you. Alright, guys, so we're talking about 4 things today, and I'm going to tell you all of them right now, every point, so that you can know ahead of time what we're getting into, okay? So number 1, we're going to be talking about lingering. Number 2, we're going to be talking about build up. Number 3, we're going to be talking about consequences. And 4, the solution, okay? Because I want to give you this talk about change, okay? Change before change changes you. It's something that I have lived by for many years now, since 2015. Now, if you don't know my story has been from 2015, September 13, I had a massive heart attack, something that I did not expect, and it happened. And the question was, why me? Why did it happen to me? And this question has been the founding of why I do everything that I do now. And realizing, really meditating, having these years to really meditate on those reasons, trying to discover what was the idea. Because doctors did their research, they couldn't find anything. They came up with one thing that they were like, okay, well, this has to be a reason, but they still don't know the cause. The only 2 things that the doctors go by is, 1, the gene MTHFR. Okay, if you don't know what that is, I will be talking about that in my YouTube channel, where I'm going to be talking about MTHFR. If you want to know more about that, go to my YouTube channel, John Jimenez, and you can find me there, and you'll be able to see that video, and just subscribe and ring that little bell so that you can know when this video is going to come out, when I announce them here. And I'll also be putting it on the website along with the podcast that I'll be making when I talk about MTHFR. Now, that was one. The second thing was that they could only say that it was a clot that had nothing to do with cholesterol, had nothing to do with eating habit, but it was an old clot that had been there, and it was just old, and it finally moved, and that's when everything happened, right? So in when they gave me that information, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, let me reimagine everything that I was doing before that time, and how did it get to there. Now, again, none of that what I'm going to say right now is proven. Everything is a theory. Okay, uh, for example, if I say, it was caused by a clot in the leg because I was doing this, it's not for certain because those are only theories that I have, not certain things that are proven that that's the cause of heart attacks. Okay, so I want to get that as a disclaimer because I don't want you to say, well, I know this guy that said that this was the cause. It's not true. This is a theory that I have on what could have happened that led to this. Okay, so we're talking today about change before change changes you. Number one, we're talking about lingering. Okay, now let me complete what I was saying a little while ago. So one of the things that I could reimagine when it came to thinking about the before the actual heart attack was that I was going to school and timeline is pressed, so you have to turn everything in on time, right? And for some of us that is super easy because we've done that so often. Even when we were in school, we were always on time, ready for things. For me, it was more important to be more creative in the facts of I enjoyed playing sports. I enjoyed, going to like the movies. I enjoyed doing stuff that were musically inclined. For me, that was more of an attraction than learning my education. So throughout school, I was an average student. And when I came into college, it became a little more difficult for me because now I was alone on these topics and I had to study and get that going while I still wanted to do the things that I enjoyed in life, right? So that in itself became stressful because I had to figure out a system that would work for me that I could function in my school. And sure enough, I did come with a system, and I actually have a calendar that I have that I made specifically, and I'll be posting it on this podcast on the website that you can go and get this calendar that I was able to fit in a way that motivated me to see things visually and be able to scratch out things that I needed to accomplish in the month, and it was really helpful. So be looking for that on the website because I will be posting it on the website once this podcast is out. So by the time you're hearing this, it should be out. Okay, so that was one, right? The stressful life, and I had to drive 55 minutes with no AC, with the windows down, and it was like summer, winter. I mean, I went through the whole season, and driving every single day from Monday through Friday. Saturdays I spend locked in my room studying. So in between that time, if you take a span of a day, I was sitting down for about 18 hours. And the way I say 18 hours is because I was sitting down studying, I was sitting down taking classes, I was going home, sitting down, studying, and then I would lay down, and that was another hours that were added to it. Now, if you take the hours or the minutes that I was standing up walking to a certain location, because yes, again, I would park like super far. I literally had to get there like super early to be the first one to park. I mean like 6, 5 in the morning waking up, or even 4, to drive to get there super early so that I could be one of the first ones to park. And that was great when I would get it because there was other people that would also wake up to do that. And it was very interesting how this whole thing built up. And my eating habit wasn't too bad. I was exercising, which was putting stress on the heart, because the more you exercise, the more you run, believe it or not, it does put stress on the heart. That's why you need to have your rest days as well, right? We don't feel it as much because one, the thing that I was diagnosed with by the doctors, the MTHFR, really doesn't affect to your exercising and your eating, because it's there's like a certain misfunction that is not doing its job in your body that is supposed to create a certain type of enzyme or protein that helps your body break down. So that's one of the causes that have the MTHFR can really lead to one be heart attack or heart disease. And going through this process, it was just stuff building after stuff, building after stuff. This is my theory of why it led up to a heart attack. And my eating habit wasn't as great. I was eating good. I was eating, my veggies. I was eating my greens. I was eating fruit. But at the same time, I was also eating, like, let's say, for example, I was late to something, so I had to just grab something real quick. So I would go to the university, grab a burger, grab a pizza, something that was already made, and eat it. Now, this wasn't every single day, but this was an occasionally when I didn't have the opportunity to make myself something at home so that I can bring it to school. Again, we're talking about trying to learn to function on a system that you have to literally do yourself, right? Now, we're talking about lingering for point number one. Now, the cost to this, okay, the lingering of what happens here is that everything that I was doing was only making the process longer. Okay, so I did have some chest pains that were kind of like pulsing. It was like a strong pulse that I would feel in my chest, and it would feel weird. I didn't feel like anything in the middle of my chest where I felt it when I got a heart attack. One of the things that I didn't do as well is I didn't burp. I thought that that was just like rude, whatever, and I didn't burp at all, one bit. Whenever I wanted to burp or something, I would try to hold it in. I would try to, in some way, go and excuse myself so that I can do a soft burp or something. But I was never a person to burp. And the ironic thing is that now I burp, and those are pretty much another topic to talk about burps. But it was super amazing how that was something that was kind of like the aftermath of the heart attack. And I didn't pay attention to the signs. I didn't pay attention to what was happening to my body. So I was, number one, with lingering is it can only get worse. And if it gets worse, it gets expensive. Okay? Gets worse and expensive. That's point number one for lingering. Gets worse and expensive. So the longer that I waited, it was going to be worse. It was going to get worse. And the expensive part was after the hospital. The payments, the amount of work, because expensive is not just about money, okay? Expensive is your time, how much it takes for you to invest in something, and invest, not just investing in money, not just investing in a product. This is your life, that you're putting your time up for investment to literally get help for the things that you need in your life to solve the problem that you want to solve. It all gets worse and it all gets expensive. The more you let something linger, the worse it's going to get and the more expensive it's going to be. Take, for example, a vehicle. You get it brand new, fine. You change the oil when you need to change it, and you change the tires when you need to change it, right? Because it's brand new. Even when you buy a used car, for you, it's a brand new car. So once you start using it, and you start, kind of like not caring for it as much as you did as in the beginning when you had it brand new, where you didn't want anybody to park next to you, when you were just watching it 24/7, and and then as you go on and the car gets older, you kind of neglect it, right? You kind of ignore maybe the oil change. What, right now I want food, not oil change, right? The tires, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't want to spend 300, $500 on tires, right? And your brakes, something else is, and you kind of ignore it just because we make the excuse of like, it's too expensive, or, I don't have the money right now, or I don't have this right now. And what's surprising is how fast we are able to come up with the money when something is an emergency. And this is the part where we make things get worse because we neglect and we let it linger on. Another example is, let's say you leave a water bucket after it rained and you don't dump it out, right? You leave it there months after months after months, and then you look at it one time, after months have passed, and you see little creatures in the water. Soon enough, summer comes and you're gonna start seeing mosquitoes. You're like, wow, where are those mosquitoes coming from? And then and then afterwards, you're gonna start getting bites. And now you're gonna have to buy repellent, and you're gonna have to buy mosquito protection, and cream to put on your mosquito bite so you won't scratch. Now it's biting other people around you now, but you still haven't changed it, and the thing is getting worse. And somehow the water now is turning from clear to brown, and you don't know what's happening. And now you're kind of grossed out because now the water's black and you don't know what to do. Right now you have frogs coming out of the water, fishes. My point is, the more it lingers, the more it gets worse and expensive. Now, what happens here with number two, things accumulate. Okay? And when you accumulate things, it gets filled. And the more it gets filled, the more pressure it's given. And the more pressure it's given, the more the eruption will be when it's time to that it can't hold what's inside of it anymore. And that deals with, say for example, when we bottle things up in our lives. We let things linger on in our lives. We take it, we take it, we take it, we take it. And instead of going the right way to solve a problem, instead of communicating with other humans, we decide that we want to bottle things in. And this is where incidents happen, where there is an accident or somebody does something not supposed to because they're super angry and they did something they didn't want to do, but at the very end they couldn't handle it and they exploded. This is what I call accumulate. When you linger, things accumulate in your life, and an explosion is soon to occur. And this is a warning to all of us, right? Whether it be in your life, maybe you've been lingering on something, and you've been lingering and you wait and wait, and then the moment is gone. And now you have to pay for it. It's very expensive. You accumulated a lot of, energy of trying to hold back and hold back and hold back, and then boom, you explode. You're mad at life, you're mad at people all over you, you think the world's against you, and now you're getting yourself sick because of the situations, you're getting stressed out, you're having anxieties, and the world is just upside down for you. This is lingering. Today we're talking about change before change changes you. Okay, guys. This is point number one that we were talking about, and it's lingering. The next one we're going to talk about is build up, so let's get into it. All right, guys. So point number two is build up. Okay. Now this is what I like to say when you're building up on something, and this is number one. I like to call it ripple into others' life. Now, we talked about the water and how the mosquitoes were going to go everywhere and start biting everyone, but the source of water was literally that bucket of water that we decided not to throw, right, after it rained. And we talk about it. We're like, where are those mosquitoes from? Where are they coming from? Why are there so many? Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. And we neglect it, right? Well, this is what happens when something builds up. When you have a cup and you overfill it with water, what happens? It spills, right? It goes over and it goes on the table, and if you don't clean it up quickly, it's going to start rolling down the table, fall into the floor, and then from the floor it's going to start creating a puddle that is going to start sprinkling a little puddle of waters everywhere. Right? We're talking about build up. Number one is ripple into others' life. Have you ever thrown a pebble in the water? I have. Some of us have, some of us haven't. If you ever get a chance, just throw a rock in the water, and you're going to see what we call ripple. The water ripples, and then little waves of water expand and expand until it no longer is there, right? When we let something linger, it builds up and it ripples on other people's life. We're talking about change before change changes you. When this ripples into people's life, they are affected by the situation that you're going through. Okay? They're affected. And because they are close to you, they're the ones that pay the most and the first. And then they go to others, and whoever's close to them that they go to, they're going to go and pay, because they're now revealing their emotion and feelings on that person, and that person's going to go to another person, and so on. The ripple continues. Okay? It affects the people around you because you let something build up. We're talking about change before change changes you. Okay? These are things that around us we don't realize it happens because we're just literally releasing what's inside of us to the people that are closest to us that will listen, and trying to have them agree with us, or having them trying to, have a conversation. We just need somebody to talk to, right? But yet again, we're not realizing the cause of what happened. We let something linger, they build up, and now it's rippling on other people. And the effect that you're having is affecting them, and so on. It carries to others until everything dies down and you no longer see people talking to you anymore. We're talking about change before change changes you. The second thing we're talking about and build up is number 2. Okay, if you're writing this down, it gets heavy to carry. That's number 2. It gets heavy to carry. Okay, number 1 was rippling to others' life. Number 2 is it gets heavy to carry. Have you ever tried to carry a bucket of water that you let linger with, until you're like, it smells, it stings, there's mosquitoes, blah, 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 bugs, all this stuff, right? Mold is growing. Have you ever let something linger and take it out? I can tell you this much. I have. I have let things linger until they create mold, and I'm just like, okay, now I need to clean it because I'm desperate for cleaning and having clean air. I have. And let me tell you, it is not an appealing or a happy thing that you want to throw out of your room, right? Or your house, or your garage, or maybe you have it outside, right? You need to carry it far so you won't have it close to your house, right? And the crazy thing is how it smells, and when you touch it, the slime that comes from it. Now, I'm telling you this because I have gone through something like this, where I let something stay there, linger, it builds up, and now it gets heavy to carry. It gets heavy. When I would carry this literally 5-gallon of what was it? It was like an ice chest, I guess, and I would carry it because I had a leak in my roof when I was younger, and I would carry this water to dump it out. And I remember I was trying to get the water not to splash because it was all the way up to the top, and I was trying to get it to balance so that it wouldn't, because it was heavy. It was super heavy, 5 pounds heavy, and I was trying to carry this to throw it away. So you could see me almost like a penguin moving back and forth, trying to get as much balance as I could to not spill any water. So when something gets heavy that you have let linger and builds up, it's hard to maneuver, it's hard to balance, your emotions are everywhere, you're really not stable when it comes to these areas. Again, we're talking about change before change changes you. These things happen not because I was, scared of the water or because the water was dirty. No. These things happen because I let it linger, I let it build up, and now I had to face the consequences of managing what I was carrying. And what happens here is that change starts developing as you're going in your life. A great example is if you start to work, right? You start working somewhere and you work there for 5 years. In between those 5 years, you started seeing the development of how you started growing in there. You started getting used to your coworkers. You started seeing coworkers leave. You started seeing new coworkers come in. You started seeing how management was working. Who did they favor? How did they hire people? Or who did they like? Who did they not like? Right? You started seeing how the company was really moving so that it can move forward, so it can make sales. And you start realizing, you know what, maybe this is for me, maybe this is not for me. Or maybe you start realizing that you like the situation and now you're willing to work for the company, make money for the company. So you start agreeing with their vision. You start agreeing with who they are. And slowly but surely, you don't notice it, but you start turning salesy. You start learning the tricks, the things to really talk to people, and you start moving into a position of management. You start moving up, and you get to the highest position. And now your whole life is dedicated to this one job that you are super proficient in because you have developed yourself into that area. This is a great example that more positive, depending on how you see it. When it comes to, it gets heavy to carry. Because one of the things that I've noticed and that I've known in my life, and one of the principles that I live by, which is in the Bible, the more knowledge you accumulate or you learn or you get, the more hurt and pain you will see. Because you start discovering how something functions. You start discovering how something is portrayed versus how it is lived. And that something can be very, very displeasing when it comes to knowing the truth about how things run. Because you start seeing the greed of what it means to, have money. And people want to be money hungry and they want to just push you out of the way. They'll step on top of you. They'll pretend to be your friends and they'll blackmail you and they'll stab you behind the back just to get where they need to be. Talking about change before change changes you. Now, this can be other people. This can be yourself. One of the things that I believe is that we all have emotions in our lives. We all have the same thing. We just choose to use one thing more than the other. It gets heavy to carry. This is what happens when we let things build up. It gets heavy to carry. And as we are in this process, life starts changing. And we adapt to that change. You may notice, you may not notice until somebody tells you, hey, you've changed, But what ends up happening here is that as we get deeper into what is happening, we're trying to balance our life. And the more we balance our life, we're trying to literally manage our life. And in so, we do things so that we can manage it, so that we can balance, right? We walk a little bit weird like a penguin so that we can adapt to what we're doing and not drop water. In other words, not ruin our life, right? Not be a failure in what, we got ourselves in because we let things linger and it build up. And we have to now change according to how our life is changing. Now, this is build up. Now that we talked about linger, we talked about build up, let's talk about point number 3, which is consequence. Alright guys, so we are on point number 3, which is consequences. Okay? Consequence. Now we talked about lingering, which was point number 1. And in lingering, we had number 1, it gets worse and expensive when you let something linger. Number 2, it accumulates. Okay, and point number 2, we talked about build up. Number 1 was about, and the points of number 2 and build up, it was ripple into other people. It ripples into other people. Number 2, it was it gets heavy to carry. Now those are things that go with build up when it comes into change, right? Because we are talking about change before change changes you. Now, what happens here after you let something linger and you let something build up, consequences follow. Now, consequences follow everything. Okay, so don't just get a misconception that consequences only deal with negative things, right? It is a repercussion of happens to you when you do something bad. No, consequences are something that happen to you regardless if you do something good or something bad. They're the outcome of what happens to you in regards of the negative and positive that you decide to do, right? In other words, you can say it in a different word: reward. This is your reward, right? But it would be a little ironic to say reward when it's a negative, right? Your reward for doing something bad, right? So my point here is consequence. What happens after you linger on something and you make it and you let it build up? Okay? Consequence. There comes a point when you receive your consequence when changes and we don't expect it. So number one in consequence is it takes your life. It takes your life. Now, necessarily, does this mean that it takes your life and you die? Some part of it, yes. And the other part is it gives you an opportunity that it almost takes your life, and it gives you that opportunity to do something different. That is the beautiful thing about change that we don't see. You know, change can ultimately take our life because we let things linger and we let it build up and then it explodes and we can do nothing about it. It takes our life, which is the same thing that happened to me when I got a heart attack. When I got a heart attack, I'm telling you, it was very simple. I was about to drink some water. I hadn't drinking water all day. And again, it happened out of nowhere, unexpected, on a Sunday. And I had to be rushed to the hospital, then flown on a halo and to another hospital so that I could get surgery there so that they could take out the clot that was on the heart, the arteries. The consequences of not paying attention to my body and not seeing where I was at, but just looking at what was in front of me, the consequences of that was that it almost took my life, which is point number one. So I'm telling you right now, what are you letting linger? What are you letting build up in your life that it's taking something from your life? It may not be your life particularly, but it may be a part of your family. It may be a part of your emotions. It may be a part of your body. It may be a friendship. It may be a workplace. It may be something that is going on in your life that it's taken from you, not necessarily life. What are we letting linger? What are we letting build up in our lives? It can be health. I mean, it can be anything at this point. Anything. But it can literally take our life. It can literally take our joy. It can literally take, the way we used to look at life. And that's when it builds up. It gets heavy to carry. Things get heavy that in our life situation, we don't look at life the same. We look at life now with disappointment and regret, and we're sour about it because we are disappointed with our past life and what we've done. What is it taking from you? In consequence number two, the burden on others' life can lead to health risk and mental. So when it affects your life, it can affect other people's life that are around you. Again, we were talking about the ripple. And in that effect, it can harm their health and their mind. Why? Because now they're receiving that same stress to help you. Now they're going out of their means to help you. Remember, we're talking today about change before change changes you. Sometimes what we're doing and we don't see it because we're not feeling what others are feeling. We're not feeling the stress and the strain that they're feeling. And we ignore that they also have a health and mind that needs to be healthy. Needs to be good. Okay, now I am going to talk about a solution, but at first I wanted to let you know the steps of what it takes when change comes and changes things, because it is inevitable. Okay, change comes and changes things because it is the way it is pushed, like the wind or like the waves. The waves are pushed, right? And they go in that direction. The winds are pushed and the trees go in that direction. That's why we can see the wind when the trees move. Again, the burden on others' life can lead to health risk and mental consequences. We're talking about consequences. On this point, we're talking about consequences. The very simple things that we just need to think about and think and be like, okay, I let stuff linger, I let stuff build up. And now I don't see it because I'm seeing the only thing that's in front of me, which is my problems, but I'm not realizing that it's also hurting others that care about me, that care about you. Consequences from lingering and build up. In the next point, we're going to talk about the solution to this, because I don't want to leave you just in a place where you're like, oh my goodness, well, this is all I have. I've been hurting people. I've been only caring about myself, blah, 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 right? But then that only puts you down and it hurts your health risk as well. And you think that you're by yourself and you should only be by yourself because you're hurting other people and you shouldn't be around people. Well, I'm going to give you a solution in point number 4, where we actually talk about solution. Okay, so we reach point number 4. Okay, point number 4, we're talking about solution. Now, if you're here because you want to know, okay, what can I do about this? I've been in this, I've gone through this, and I need something to help me out, right? Now, if you've never gone through this, if you haven't noticed this happening in your life, but you want to help someone else, solve this solution, this problem, and give them a solution, this is perfect. This is something that we can take into our own lives as well, so that we can have a solution in our lives, because we all need this. We all go through this. We are humans. We go through this in a process, whether it be negative or positive. We go through this. Remember, this is just not a negative notation that is happening here, but also a positive one, because the more you linger on something good, the more things you can build up that are good. Okay? So this happens with both negative and positive, but this is what happens when we linger on the wrong thing in life that can really harm us and harm others around us. And again, I mean, you can go into the conversation that goes, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right? And of course, that's another time, another topic that we'll talk about, because it's something that actually has been in my heart, and I will be talking about that in other episodes. But today we're talking about change before change changes you. Now, solution. Point number 4, solution. Now, number 1, okay, are you ready for this? Get your pen out, get your paper out, and get yourself writing, or get your phone out, get yourself taking notes for solution. So number 1 for solution is do it now, not later. Okay? Do it now, not later. This will save you time, disappointment, expense, and the getting worse and the accumulation. This will save you time. Now, take for example the water or the car, the example that we get. If you take your car, boom, when you're supposed to, when you take your car, you maintain it, you find information about it, you take care of your car can last a very, very long time and drive amazing. Why? Because we did it now, not later. So whenever you start feeling something in your body changing, maybe you start gaining weight or something, and you start feeling unhealthy, you start feeling like unhappy with your body, then make a change now. This is where we get change before change changes you. Make a change now. Do it now before change changes you. Okay, because if let's take that scenario, you gain weight, you're not happy with your weight, you're not happy with the shape you're becoming, and you just keep on that road, well, change is going to happen. Okay, as you are in that road, change is going to develop as you start changing with what you're putting in your body, because it's fitting you in there. Again, we're talking about it gets heavy to carry. So now you're balancing your way, and now you're trying to wait and wait and wait, and now you're having health issues. And now you have to pay for the doctor, and now you have to pay for the hospital, and now you have to pay for surgery, and now you have to pay for medication. So it builds up and it gets heavier to carry, and other people start suffering from it. But if you do it now, then later, if you stop yourself right now and say, you know what, I am not happy with the shape I'm becoming. I'm not happy with the way I'm feeling with my body and health. So I'm gonna do a change, you know? I'm gonna eat better. I'm gonna research about food and what's best for me. I'm gonna go to my doctor and check what is my blood levels. I'm gonna check with my doctor to see what food and diet I need to take, and go to a nutrition, start working out, do whatever I can to fix it now, to do it now, not later. Steps. Right now, if you are on point number 3 and you're like, I'm already on the consequences, then I would tell you this right now. Do it now, not later. Change your habit now. Change what you're doing now. This is the time that we have. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, but now. If you make the decision now, it'll be easier the next day. And it'll be easier the next day. I'm not saying that it's not going to be challenging, because everything has a process, and within that process, it's challenges. So everything has a process, its own challenges, but you have to decide, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this now for the sake of myself, for the sake of the people that I love, for the friendships that I want to hold, for the things that I want to have in my life. I need to do this for myself, so that others don't have to pay for it later, because you love them as much as they love you. Okay, number 2 is, even thought it seems expensive, it won't be as expensive if you wait. Even if it is expensive right now, okay, I misread my sentence. Even though it may seem, you may think right now it is super expensive. Like, take for example the working out and going to the gym, maybe going to nutritionists, going to a doctor. It may seem expensive now, but trust me, it's not going to be as expensive, or even a fraction of what it's going to cost you when the time comes when change makes its decision. If I were to make a change a lot earlier, right? I was 125 in high school, and the time that they weighed me when I had the heart attack, I was 155. I was way overweight. 155, okay? Now, I'm not saying that is the cause of a heart attack, okay? Again, the beginning of what I talked about, that is not the cause of it. They haven't figured out what even is a cause of heart attack. They can only suggest that there are things that can build up to a heart attack, okay? So I was about a couple of pounds, not even a couple, I was a lot of pounds, about 20, 25 pounds over, 30 pounds overweight, okay? And if I would have just paid for the gym, paid for good food that was healthy, eat my greens, eat my veggies, my vegetables, eat the things that I need to drink a lot of water instead of drinking Cokes or other Cokes, Dr. Pepper, all this stuff like that. Instead of doing that, now again, I'm not saying those are the causes of heart attacks, but it built up to a heart attack. Okay? If I would have spent here, I would have spent about, let me see, I would say about $30 to like $50 probably, paying for the gym, maybe paying a nutrition, Of course, it could cost more than that. I'm just saying roughly, for the gym, about, 20 something dollars. Maybe going to the doctors if you do have insurance, or if you don't, about from 30 to $125. To get blood work, maybe another $25, 150. So you're already about like what, 140 or 130. And then you want to get a nutrition, that's gonna be about like maybe $300 to get a nutrition to set you up with something. So overall, you're about $300 in. Okay, versus when I went to the hospital, $300 does seem like a lot, right? But nutrition you only need for 1 month. Exercise, you can get it every month at $20 or less. And let's say going to the doctors is only a one-time payment that you go to every 6 months. So all of that compared to $100,000 that at the end of my heart attack I owed. A little more than $100,000. So what do you think? $300,000 in a month, or $100,000 more plus $100,000 that I had to pay after a heart attack? Believe you me that it's more expensive, the aftermath, than if you do it right now. Okay? Number 3, we're talking about first sign is always a warning. First sign. Okay, we in every area as humans, we tend to neglect the first sign. Why? Because it wasn't a big deal. You know what? I'm still alive. I'm still walking. I'm still good. I can feel my strength. I'm good. The first sign is always a warning. So when we ask the question, why me? Why did it happen? Think about the first sign you had. Some of us don't have that knowledge because we probably never had in our immediate family a history that we've seen something like that happen. None of that had happened in my family. In my immediate family that I knew at the moment. The only thing that we've had was been like my grandma. She had, I believe she had diabetes, and that caused other stuff. But it grew into that, and that's because she wasn't a woman that would eat like crazy. She was petite. She was small, and she ate like very, very calmly and everything. So I don't know why she got that, right? But that's the only thing that I have known in my family besides myself having a heart attack. So when it comes to the first sign is always a warning, it doesn't have to be you that gets the first sign. It can be a family member. It can be a friend that you know. It can be a friend's family member that talked to you about their family having a problem. You could be that ripple that comes like in the very end that barely gets the hit. The first sign is always a warning. Whether you see it, you feel it, or you hear it, the first sign is always a warning. So what do you do in that warning? You do it now. You fix it now. What do you need to do? Do it now before it's too late, before it gets too expensive and you start thinking about it. Do it now. Number 4 is no. It starts small before it gets bigger. Okay? Know that it starts small before it gets bigger. Okay, so the point of this is that it's gonna start very tiny. You're not even gonna know. But again, you gotta take your first sign. But it starts small before it gets big. Again, for me, it was, first of all, I should have paid attention when my grandma came up with something, but I didn't because it wasn't me, right? But it was something small that happened. Of course, it wasn't something small and as, the person and who they were, but what I'm saying, it was something that wasn't happening to myself, so I didn't take it seriously. Instead, I was just like, oh my goodness, my grandma's going through this, so I was giving empathy, I was giving compassion, but I wasn't thinking about it in a sense of a warning. Remember, it starts small before it gets bigger. I experienced the small and I experienced the bigger. That's why I'm here today telling you, do it now before it's too late. Change before change changes you. That's what we have today. That's the solution that we have today. If you are going through a change now, change now. It may be uncomfortable. You may not like it. You may think that it's going to be overwhelming, but trust me, it's not going to be as overwhelming as the ripple or the repercussion that's going to happen after that. It's not. Do it now, then later. And that is the solution that I have for you, that is simple but yet powerful. Okay? Powerful. Powerful. Trust me. And it's going to make you a better human. All right, everyone, you made it to the end of today's podcast. I'm super, super excited that you were here today. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our podcast, where you are listening from, whatever country you're in right now. It's so amazing to have this podcast being able to be shared across many countries around the world. And I appreciate each and every one of you, each and every country that is listening to us, that is sharing this message, because I know it is something that is important. It is something that is just amazing. And what we hope here that it helps in is that we help that it inspires you, that it motivates you to be better humans, because that's what we're here for. Okay, we're here, we have one another, and that's all we have, and that's what we need to do. Be better humans with our life, with each other, with the things that are around us in this world, and take care of it. If you haven't listened to the last podcast when I talk about the world and how our purpose is, make sure you go and check that podcast out as well. Let me tell you, it's going to help you out a lot in clearing a lot of things on purpose. Okay, what your purpose is here on earth, all that stuff, it clears it up for you. So go to that podcast if you need it. If you need help on that area, go to it. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I really appreciate your support, and most of all, anything that you want to ask, go to our website at makelimitedpodcast.com, where you'll be able to send your messages and let us know what you went through, what's your story, so that we can share it. And if you want to be a part of this podcast, make sure that you let us know on there as well. Send us who you are, talk to us, and we'll reach you as soon as possible so that we can get you on the podcast and we can talk more about how to make lemons into lemonade, because we all go through life circumstances, but the best things we can do is help one another. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here, and we talk to you next time. Peace.